One, two, three, mic testing.
So basically, again, when you hire a data scientist, people expect magic out of them. That's
Hello and welcome everyone to the next episode of Analytics India Magazine podcast Simulated Reality. Today we have with us the head of analytics at IndusOS, Parikshit Nag. Hi Parikshit, welcome.
Thanks, Kashyap. Thanks for having me here.
So today we are going to discuss a very controversial topic. It is being discussed around the world in the tech industry, and it almost not everyone, hopefully, but many people are getting affected by it, and soon its impact is here. Might be felt in India as well. So we're going to talk about the mass layoffs that are happening in the tech world, in Silicon Valley, and across the world. Why do you think that is still? Are we still in the pandemic hangover, or is it the upcoming recession that we are going to face, or what is the reason? Why is everybody? Uh,
So it's a very interesting question, Kashyap, if you ask me. So during COVID, while there were multiple layoffs which happened, but the tech industry did see a boom because there was this cry out saying that why don't we adopt tech, and it became a necessity because the in-person interactions were not happening. So you needed tech to actually augment some of the functions which were actually coming about, and to get the right set of insights, people started becoming more reliant on data and the insights which were coming through, right? So you saw the boom which came through at that point in time. There was a huge funding which came in, and we've also seen how the demand for analytics and data science folks increased during that period. But in along with that, there were also cases where there were layoffs happening, and it's also because I feel people usually are not very clear on the value which data science is bringing on the table, or how to actually quantify the business value which comes to the table. Like if data science was a necessity, which usually is the case for most tech first products which are there, it's a part and parcel of life. It's not a support function. It's something which becomes the core of that product's operations. If that is the case, obviously it becomes a core function, and obviously the layoffs for that particular function would be as delayed as possible. Versus if you treat analytics and data science as a support function, then obviously when it comes to cost cutting, the support functions usually take the first hit and the core functions are retained. So ensuring that the right set of benefits are called out from data science is something which is very critical, which actually would have helped us see through that recession period at that point in time, which came about from COVID.
okay, so funny you say overheads, right? You mentioned about the data science team being overheads. Uh, but you just mentioned before that as well that the entire pandemic made enterprises realize the need for data-driven intelligent automation. And that's why they hired in such big numbers. Suddenly, data scientists were in high demand, and everybody kind of, hired for digital transformation per se. Why do you are they? So my question is, did they have these people not become an integral part where they move from just someone you have like a someone you have an add-on to becoming an integral part of the business processes?
That's a very interesting question, Kashyap. So again, these opinions are purely mine. So when this data and this digital transformation boom came about, many organizations did it really well. I've seen that in the past. If you talk about HUL, the digital transformation journey for HUL has been phenomenal. But there were also many organizations who took up who felt that they're probably missing out on something. The fear of missing out syndrome did set in, which is why they decided to just hire an analytics team without a very clear roadmap of saying that what would this team do and what does the short term versus the long term vision of this particular team entail. It might have just been to say that, and you see that craze everywhere, right? If you talk about the metaverse today, people are investing in metaverse. Not everyone is actually realizing the value out of it, or the total value which you could probably achieve out of it, right? So that was also the case with data and analytics at that point in time for quite a few organizations, and then they could not quantify the business value which comes out of it, right? Which then becomes a problem, saying that if you are hiring a data scientist, you need to ensure that a few things are already set up. You have the right business problems stated out and quantified. I mean, the data scientist should have enough business insights. We should have the right data platforms set up so that the models which they are building in as a POC could be put into production, and the end state design should also be in place so that this solution seamlessly fits into the current ways of working, and the end user, the team who's actually using these solutions, don't feel like there is a huge change management process which needs to come into play. So So that usually becomes a problem. And if along with hiring a data scientist, if you don't have all of these supporting functions put into play, right, the data, whatever work the data scientist is doing, you will probably not be able to generate the maximum value out of it.
You mentioned it's funny, you mentioned a series of processes which should go behind the decision making of uh, hiring a data science team or building a data team per se. uh, One of the things that I feel that data scientists are high in demand, and that is something that we have been talked about, not just data scientists, data professionals throughout the pipeline. But that's the dark side of it, right? It's funny how uh, bigger like professionals at a very higher level, they just want, because of a fear of missing out, they just created this demand for data scientists even without setting up what they want it for or setting up a business problem that they want to solve. And then suddenly this demand goes up, and then we hit a recession, and then suddenly we fall. What How do you ensure that there is this education, that you, because you have worked in data, you have this education, you know that you address the business problem at the start, you identify the business problem at the start, and then kind of address the solution, whether it might be data or not is a different thing. How do you educate business leaders, enterprise leaders of today, to ensure that data scientist is not just this thing and suddenly you can't hire in bulk, and then otherwise then it becomes a very ethical issue of mass layoffs?
So I think this push actually needs to come right from the top, like right from the top, the
But the
senior
top
level.
are only not aware of it, right?
No, so that's where they need to be educated, right? So basically, again, when you hire a data scientist, people expect magic out of them. That's probably not going to happen, right? If you're not actually equipping them with the right set of resources. So when you talk about hiring a data scientist, you need to first ask, if maybe the senior management comes to you and says that yes, we need to set up a data science team, right? You need to have a set of prerequisites which actually go with it, so that the entire solutions can be augmented in the right way, right? Saying, do you have the right data available? Is it available at speed and at scale? Do you have the right infrastructure in place to actually scale up the models which the data scientist is building, right? And also, again, like I talked about, the integration with the final business users, saying that yes, this is a data science solution you have been working in a kind of way in the past, but now this has to be integrated with the current solution. This is the new solution which we want to propose to you, and we feel that this should be integrated in your ways of working. How do you seam out the change management? Because again, people are not very comfortable with change, right? That's human nature. We need to all be very aware of it. So educating them and making sure that they realize what kind of business value, be it top line or bottom line, that data science is delivering or is capable of delivering, is obviously needs to be step one. It needs to be quantified. And then there is the other way around, saying that someone might just come in and say, like, let's build a model. Let's build a model for this, right? Again, and then if it's not useful enough, or if it's not structured well enough, you might see later on in life that that model is just running and no one else is using those results. So at that point in time, asking the question of what actually needs to be done, why do you need this, what problem are you solving for, what is it what is the end outcome that you want to see out of it, and how much business value do you see coming out of it as well. Again, very basic example, maybe you might set up a solution which in the end you find that the business value, which the top line business impact which is there, is probably about X dollars, right? And you're probably paying like almost 1 or 1.2x to the data scientist as a salary. And there will also be overhead. So it's a non-viable solution which is going to come through, right? And it's not going to run. So we need to ensure that we have the right expectations set and aligned before actually picking up any of these projects. And on the first part, again, like I mentioned, we need to be very structured in the way we set up the data science team, and the prerequisites are also called out very categorically before any data science project is set up.
You said that we have to set the expectations right, and
Yeah.
but my question is, who sets these expectations? And I'll tell you why I'm asking this, right? It's funny. So because let's say I'm a data science professional who has worked, I'm a data leader who has worked in this for 12 to 15 years, right? And I started probably working in data when data did not, the buzzwords at least did not exist. We have always made data driven decisions. But then when you are approached by this industry, suddenly, let's say a big brand, that is making a multi-million dollar brand comes to you and says, I want to kind of, everybody is doing data, everybody is implementing AI, I want to build AI. but then you are approached and then you say that let's do some AI and this thing, but how and they give a good salary. Nobody is not going to give a good salary, especially a data leader is a very rare species today. Why would the person say that, what, let's not build a data team, don't pay me this kind of a salary, because your solutions are not going to be solved by data. The problem, or it needs to be approached differently. You shouldn't look at, I want to implement AI. You should look at it as, I want to solve a business problem. Maybe AI or data is the solution. So why would anyone stop something like that, right?
Okay, that's a very interesting question, and I think many people do come up with this conundrum, and I've seen many such cases where people want to hire or build a data science team. They are looking for data science leaders, but again, it comes down to the fact to say that like the clear vision is not there. So when you're being hired as a data science or a data leader, maybe per se, there are a few expectations which you should always put down on the table, saying that you need to first understand what is the data stack which is currently there. If it's not there, you need to set up the clear expectation that this needs to be built. It will probably require X amount of investment to build this data stack. That's one, right? Is the senior management aligned with your vision? When you're obviously interviewing for a senior role, you need to have those discussions with the CXOs of the firm as well, right? So you need to set up your expectations. This is what you're expecting. This is what my roadmap and my vision is, and it's probably going to take X amount of time to get there. And the third part is ensuring that everyone is aware of the analytics transformation journey, like which is around descriptive, predictive, prescriptive, that entire the diagnostic, descriptive, predictive, prescriptive space which is there. Everyone should be aware of that. If the entire BI setup is not there in the ecosystem, people don't know what's actually happening. So the first question of what is happening is the first question which needs to be answered in the data transformation journey. What is happening? Then the question is, why is this happening? So then that also still becomes the diagnostic element. Then the question should then the business folks should start feeling the need to ask the question as to how do we stop it, or what's going to happen next. So that's where prescriptive and predictive comes into play. It should be an organic growth which is encompassed, which is embedded within the organization's DNA, to say that once you have one set of solution in place, the descriptive piece in place, it should organically lead to the diagnostic piece as well. And then it should be followed by the predictive and the prescriptive space. And the demand should come inside out instead of the leaders or someone else pushing it outside in.
Setting the expectations is very important, I think.
Yes.
And that shouldn't just carry through in terms of the availability of data, but also at the same time, in terms of what are the number of human resources you need. Suddenly overhiring, saying that some enthusiastic leader in an enterprise say, I want to implement AI, give big budgets. The data, I think it's important that the data leader sets the expectation right. Ensures that there is no hiring or ensures that there is hiring only that is needed. Suddenly laying off is also something not ethical, right? And I think that's where the problem has become, where everybody got too enthusiastic about the digital transformation, hired so many employees, and then suddenly because see, events like the pandemic or the recession are going to happen. It's not that, but suddenly laying off becomes very, there's a lot of ethical, not just ethical, from a personal point of view also, there's a lot of, are you going to take the ownership or responsibility for that? It becomes this thing, right? Let's move on to the other side, right? So basically, as a data, when in a world where data scientists are in high demand, you're suddenly a data scientist that is laid off, right? So then the first thought is that you are not integral or important, integral to the company, or not important enough. How do you not let that confidence affect you? How do you address, what is the first thing that you tell yourself when you're laid off?
See, I think while it's a very hard situation to be in when you're laid off, I think the first and the most important thing is you should not let it hamper or impact your confidence. While it's easier said than done, I think that's one practice which someone needs to start putting into their DNA. I think after you get laid off, you can take a couple of weeks off, like just let this entire thing sink in, and you should let it first pass through your system. Else, any other step which you take in with that kind of a paranoid mindset, it might actually impact you way too much, right? So you know you're getting a good severance package, you can afford to take a couple of weeks off, is what, and just let everything go, let your mind relax. That's probably the first thing from a mental standpoint that you should do. Second thing is, after you have a clearer state of mind, you're in a clear state of mind, you should actually reflect back and try to figure out what actually went wrong. Was it where the company actually had to lay off because they were not meeting their financial goals, or was it because of your own performance? Right? If it's the latter, if it's the first one, there's nothing much that you can do. It's a part and parcel of life. When you move on to selecting your next organization, you need to ensure that the core fundamentals of that organization is stable. They have a stable balance sheet. Feel free to ask that question, like if they're profitable or not, what is their revenue growth. Ensure that they are in a stable position. Talk to the leaders whom you're actually interviewing with, and figure out what is their data strategy. So you can ensure that they are actually a core and integral part of the organization, and it's not something where it's just like people are experimenting with the data science team or just trying to look and build one, right? So you will learn that from experience, and that's something which you can definitely try out, and what are the key questions which you need to ask in the next round. And if it's because of personal performance, which may also be the case, because what's happening nowadays with data scientists is that they're trying to cover up way too much ground, and in a very little time. So people are just speeding up to learn things, and as a result of that, they're just grazing the surfaces. So what I usually advise people is to maybe take a step back, go figure out their fundamentals, strengthen out their fundamentals, and then like upskill themselves, ensure that the gaps which were there in the previous organization in terms of whether it be building a model or deploying a model or ensuring that they understand the business problem properly, are addressed. They can work on a few internships or consulting projects or even open source data to ensure that that gap is covered, so that next time when they interview, they can be very honest, speak about it, and say that this is where I lacked, which is why I got fired or I got laid off, whatever be it. And after that, I've taken these corrective steps, and I feel now that this is not going to be a problem with me anymore.
Correct. And I think so that's the first step, right? So as soon as you're laid off, you tell yourself, probably you gather that you kind of introspect whether it was you, or take a few days off. What is the second step, right? So now I'm a data scientist, so I don't have to worry too much, because data scientists are still high in demand. Data scientist jobs are still seeing increase itself. That's not an issue. What is the second step in terms of one of the points you mentioned, that you start identifying companies that are more stable or with more ethical values. How do you do that? How do you ensure that you find a company that is more where you won't face this again, even if you are not well enough, right? Or if you're really bad at your job, probably yes, but probably somewhere where because of financial constraints that you had to be fired because you were not as, or you had to be let go, you were not as good. If it's a good company, they will kind of hold on to you, nurture you and grow you. How do you ensure that you find such companies? Because that's the second step, right?
I think that, again, like I mentioned in the previous set as well, you can do that through interviews or through any external research which you can do about the organization. When you are interviewing with someone, obviously there is a tendency to say that people would obviously want to oversell that particular role or that particular department there, right? So you need to ask some very strategic questions. One could be like, who's the sponsor of this particular team? Who's the head of analytics reporting into? So you know that whether there is a P&L accountability sitting with this team as well. Then you can discuss the projects which are actually being implemented. You could ask about what kind of value is this actually adding back. If the business leader is sorted, and he would obviously be able to call out the P&L numbers, even if it's on a very high scale as well, right? And if they're looking to hire new folks and there are new projects and initiatives which are being planned, ask them what is the roadmap, how long is this project going to be for, what is the larger scale roadmap which you see for this particular project, how are you deriving value out of it. And that also helps you understand that whether they are actually invested in it. If they say that like this is going to be a 3 month project and then it's going to be a make or break kind of a thing, it's not the case, right? There are very few projects which you can close off in 3 months and be like, this is like completely sorted and this is how it's going to be. So some of these things, because within 3 months there will be a lot of feedback which will start coming in from business users. That integration, it takes time. It's not going to be that short of a deal, a 3 month or a 1 month project maybe. Then you know that the vision and the expectations are not right. Then you also talk about the learning and development goals which the team has, and how much is the organization actually investing into it. Saying that yes, there is an XX dollar value budget which is set aside for every individual to upskill themselves. Upskilling yourselves or getting this many credits every year is a mandatory task for all individuals. Saying that they are, then you realize the fact that yes, they are focused on your learning. And another important indicator is usually the fact that, like, what kind of learning and development budgets that the organization actually has set for you as an individual. Saying that, is there a budget allocated for every individual to do X number of courses or upskill themselves? How much focus do they actually does the organization actually put on upskilling? You can talk to your hiring manager. He'll be able to give a very clear roadmap. And if the person is beating around the bush, it means that it probably doesn't exist. Right. So that gives you a clear perspective on whether the organization is willing to invest in you as an individual first, rather than just calling on the business value which you're bringing to the
Isn't this
organization.
all a bit difficult? So you're essentially saying interview the interviewer.
And you definitely should do that.
Isn't it very a bit difficult when you've been just laid off? Like, how do you?
No, but that is something which you're trying to avoid, right? I mean, even if it may be difficult, it's not that you're in a desperate situation. Like you mentioned, there's enough enough demand for data science folks in the ecosystem. That's my personal belief. If you're good enough, you'll definitely get a job. But if you feel that you don't have the space to question your interviewer about the organization and the way the team actually operates, I mean, then that in itself is a red flag to say that you're probably not in a healthy setup.
Correct. And you mentioned that, it might also be because, since you were let go, and there were obviously some data scientists that were in. What is the kind of, there must be something different. It may be just the projects, or it could also be because of some of the skills
Yeah.
that you are lacking, or you're just not good enough. Or how do you identify that? How do you work towards, kind of upskilling yourself, so that the next time you're laid off, it's not your fault that you were kind of.
I would personally hope that, like, no one faces that same situation twice in their lives. But again, like, when you actually realize that there is something lacking within yourself, right? You need to go back to the drawing board and figure out where did you go wrong in your entire data science journey, and it could be right from the start. Saying that your fundamentals are not strong enough and you're trying to build neural networks on top of every solution, every problem statement which is coming your way. That's probably not the right way to go. So going back to the drawing board and starting from scratch, I would recommend people go up and strengthen their fundamentals first. That's one. Make sure that their core understanding of math, stats, and programming is very clear. The second part then becomes is to say that where is it that you want to focus on. If it was a classification problem that you were working on, did you build the wrong model, or is there any other thing? You could pick up some open source projects and then work on them and just get your hands dirty to see whether you're actually understanding the data correctly, right? So that becomes a step two. Then the third step obviously would be to, like, maybe do some freelancing projects and test your skill out in real world, because some of the open source projects which are there, it's a very ideal kind of a scenario, right? If you do a open source project with someone, or a consulting project with someone, it might give you a bit more of an exposure, be it through an internship or through or just maybe as a consulting services. Maybe that might be a good way to, like, test your skills and ensure that gap is covered. And the reason I'm saying that this needs to be done is, you might just go to an interview, say that yes, like, these were my shortcomings, but I did rectify them, right? Now you would have concrete proof saying that I did rectify these mistakes which I made, and I've also worked on these projects and these engagements where I've delivered value, and it's there on paper, right? So that becomes a lot more easier to quantify and call out.
Yeah, I think this is very similar to kind of whenever you're applying for any job,
Yep.
per se, but just like revisit your fundamentals and do this. So I think we talked about the enterprises, right? So essentially the expectation setting at the enterprise level should be correct, so
Yep.
that there is no need to to resort to mass layoffs. They should also be kind of understand their business problems more correctly, have processes where they can avoid this. We also talked about the individuals. Once the inevitable laying off happens, you kind of reflect on it. You revisit what went wrong, take a break. This thing. I think one of the very important roles that a person has to. One of the very important roles is that of the manager who's going to take that person back,
Mhm.
because while I have not been laid off, I've had instances where my performance wasn't good, and my contract didn't get extended. And in these situations, I think the manager plays very important role to kind of gain your confidence back. What advice would you give the managers who are just entering back into the data science? And how much of a handholding, because I think they will need slightly more handholding than usual, because I'm not saying micromanaging,
Yep, yep.
slightly more handholding. What is their role in kind of ensuring that a data scientist gets back on track to kind of retrack his career, or his or her or their career?
So are you talking about the new hiring manager or like any
The
data
new
science
hiring manager.
manager?
So after the person loses their job, and then kind of takes them back into
Okay.
a new company. So what is their role in this?
So when it comes to data science managers or any manager per se, I think they are solely responsible for their team's deliveries and the value which they are actually putting out on the table, ensuring that they deliver value versus also ensuring that they are happy in their own role and they feel that they are and they are challenged enough is the core responsibility of any manager, be it like in data science or in general management. It's just the same, right? So when you're actually hiring someone who's been laid off, you have to be sensitive and cognizant of the fact that their morale might be a bit low. I mean, not in terms of like performance, where they might be a bit more anxious or a bit paranoid, saying that like they're freaking out with every particular step that they're doing, because they might just feel that it's not. What will happen if it goes wrong, right? That amount of anxiousness does remain within that individual, is what I feel. So calming the individual down, ensuring that, or making sure that that person is in a safe space, getting that data scientist to believe that they are in a safe space and they can breathe and they are allowed to make mistakes, is something which the manager needs to set an expectation for right from the start. It should not be that his paranoia continues and he feels that yes, oh, here also if I make a mistake I might just get laid off. So ensuring that the person is in a safe space is very, very critical, and the manager has the maximum role to play over there. And the next step is always to ensure that the roadmap for that particular individual is set really well, be it in terms of learning or in terms of the delivery which is expected out of that person. It should be very clearly called out. It should not be that you just open a blank space with a huge amount of ambiguity in any project and you hand that data scientist to manage it individually, right? So when a new guy is joining in, and I'm guessing that this is for mostly for junior roles, what exactly needs to be achieved out of this project from a data science perspective? Again, the business value is not something which this junior data scientist is concerned with, right? That has already been established. Now you know what exactly needs to be delivered. It's very clearly called out and shared with that person, and that person should be given enough freedom to operate in his own space, saying that you experiment, you figure your way out, but this is the end result which is expected out of you. That needs to be clear. And like I said, the third point, saying that how do you ensure that the person is growing individually, having that learning and development plan put in place. And I keep emphasizing on it more and more when we talk about data sciences, because this industry is evolving at a rapid pace. If you just stop learning today, 3 years down the line you might just become a dinosaur, if I may call it that way. So you need to ensure that every individual is learning and is up to speed with what's actually going on in the market, so that he also knows that he is being pushed both from a work perspective and from a personal development and a growth perspective, while he knows that he is operating in a safe space. So these are the three things which I think any manager should be very keen on focusing on.
Yeah, he or her.
He or her, sorry.
Yeah. That's enterprises, then data scientists, and then managers. Any final message for Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg?
And no comments.
Okay, fair enough. With that note, thank you so much, Parikshit, for coming to the podcast.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, Kashyap. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you.